You're watching KSG News, where you get all the latest updates from across the globe to help with your exam preparations. We begin with GS Paper 1. India has slipped 28 places to rank 140th among 156 countries in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report 2021, becoming the third worst performer in South Asia. According to the report, India has closed 62.5% of its gender gap till date. The country had ranked 112th among 153 countries in the Global Gender Gap Index 2020. Now, what is this all about, and what does this really mean? Now see, the decline has also taken place on the economic participation and opportunity subindex, albeit to a lesser extent. The report said India's gender gap on this dimension widened by 3% this year, leading to a 32.6% gap closed till date. Most of the decline occurred on the political empowerment subindex, where India regressed 13.5 percentage points, with a significant decline in the number of women ministers from 23.1% in 2019 to 9.1% in 2021. Among the drivers of this decline is a decrease in women's labor force participation rate, which fell from 24.8% to 22.3%. In addition, the share of women in professional and technical roles declined further to 29.2%. The share of women in senior and managerial positions also remains low. Only 14.6% of these positions are held by women, and there are only 8.9% firms with female top managers. Further, the estimated earned income of women in India is only 1/5 of men's, which puts the country among the bottom 10 globally on this indicator. Discrimination against women is also reflected in the health and survival subindex statistics, with 93.7% of this gap closed to date. India ranks among the bottom 5 countries in this subindex. Wide gaps in sex ratio at birth are due to the high incidence of gender-based sex-selective practices. In addition, more than 1 in 4 women has faced intimate violence in her lifetime, as per the report. Conversely, 96.2% of the educational attainment subindex gender gap has been closed, with parity achieved in primary, secondary, and tertiary education. Yet, gender gaps persist in terms of literacy. 1/3 of women are illiterate, that is 34.2%, compared to 17.6% of men. Talking about India's neighbors, among India's neighbors, Bangladesh ranked 65, Nepal 106, Pakistan 153, Afghanistan 156, Bhutan 130, and Sri Lanka 116. Among regions, South Asia is the second lowest performer on the index, with 62.3% of its overall gender gap closed. India is the third worst performer in the region, having closed 62.5% of its gap. Because of its large population, India's performance has a substantial impact on the region's overall performance. In South Asia, only Pakistan and Afghanistan ranked below India. The report stated that India, home to 0.65 billion women, has widened its gender gap from almost 66.8% 1 year ago to 62.5% this year. In Pakistan and Afghanistan, the income of an average woman is below 16% of that of an average man, while in India it is 20.7%. As the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic continues to be felt, the global gender gap has increased by a generation from 99.5 years to 135.6 years. For the 12th time, Iceland is the most gender-equal country in the world. The top 10 most gender-equal countries include Finland, Norway, New Zealand, Rwanda, Sweden, Ireland, and Switzerland. Shifting focus to GS Paper 2, the government has enforced new rules that will change the operating procedure for centrally sponsored schemes, or the CSS. The new rules will tighten the procedure for grant allocation and increase the scrutiny on utilisation of funds disbursed. The Department of Expenditure order, dated 23rd of March, vouches for more effective cash management and brings more efficiency in public expenditure management. Now, what are we talking about here? From the 1st of July 2021, all the states will have to set up a single nodal agency for each centrally sponsored schemes. The states will have to open with an account in a commercial bank to carry out their government business. If required, separate SNAs may be created for sub-schemes of an umbrella scheme. All union ministries and departments will release the central share for each CSS to a state government's account held in the RBI for further release to this SNA account. Then, the state governments will transfer the central share within 21 days and release its own share within 40 days of the release of the centre's share. CSS had become one of the largest financial outgoings for the centre. Several committees and finance commissions have recommended pruning and rationalization to increase its effectiveness. The time lag in release of grants, poor utilization of funding, and parking of funds in states for interest are among the issues red flagged. Shifting focus to GS Paper 3, this information is in connection with health. Russia has registered the world's first vaccine against COVID-19 for animals. The country's agriculture safety watchdog Roselkosnadzor said on the 31st of March. Russia already has 3 coronavirus vaccines for humans. Now, Moscow has also given emergency approval to 2 others, Epivac Corona and Covivac. Now, what is the significance of this? The vaccine for animals, developed by a unit of Roselkosnadzor, was named Carnivac Cov. The clinical trials of Carnivac Cov, which started last October, involved dogs, cats, Arctic foxes, minks, foxes, and other animals. The results of the trials allow us to conclude that vaccine is harmless and highly immunogenic, as all the vaccinated animals developed antibodies to the coronavirus in 100% of the cases. Immunity lasts for 6 months after vaccination, but the shot's developers are continuing to analyze this. As per Roselkosnadzor, the mass production of the vaccine could start as early as April. In some more updates related to GS Paper 3, the US space agency NASA has exchanged data of its current Mars mission with its counterpart in China, India, the UAE, and the European Space Agency to lower the risk of a collision, as their spacecraft were also currently hovering the red planet, a report said on the 31st of March. The purpose of exchanges was to lower the risk of a collision, as their spacecraft are orbiting the red planet. In a statement, NASA said, and I quote, "To assure the safety of our respective missions, NASA is coordinating with the UAE, European Space Agency, Indian Space Research Organization, and the China National Space Administration, all of which have spacecraft in orbit around Mars, to exchange information on our respective Mars missions to ensure the safety of our respective spacecraft." This limited exchange of information is consistent with customary good practices used to ensure effective communication among satellite operators and spacecraft safety in orbit. ISRO's Mars Orbiter mission, Mangalyaan spacecraft, remained in Mars orbit since it entered there in 2014. India is the first Asian country to successfully send a spacecraft to Mars. NASA's Perseverance has landed on Mars last month, and its rover is currently exploring its surface, while China's Tianwen-1, consisting of an orbiter, a lander, and a rover, entered the parking lot of orbit around Mars on the 24th of February 2021 and expected to land there in the next few months. United Arab Emirates spacecraft Hope is also orbiting the Mars planet. There are 2 spacecraft from the European Space Agency in the Martian orbit, as per the report. Previously, the US, Russia, EU besides India have succeeded in sending spacecraft to Mars, regarded as the most complex space mission. More updates related to GS Paper 3. The World Bank has scaled up its projection for India's economic growth by 4.7 percentage points to 10.1% for financial year 2021 to 2022, citing a strong rebound in private consumption and investment growth. The report, South Asia Economic Focus Spring 2021 South Asia Vaccinates, also forecast the economy to decline by 8.5% in financial year 2021, higher than 8% projected by India's National Statistical Office. Considering the uncertainty in 2021 to 2022, the bank also gave a range of economic growth for India, 7.5 to 12.5%. Now, what does this really mean and how important is this? Given the significant uncertainty pertaining to both epidemiological and policy developments, real GDP growth for financial year 2022 can range from 7.5 to 12.5% depending on how the ongoing vaccination campaign proceeds, whether new restrictions to mobility are required, and how quickly the world economy recovers. Over the medium term, growth is projected to stabilize within a 6 to 7% range. The report said public consumption will contribute positively, but pent-up private demand is expected to fade by the end of 2021. Investment will pick up gradually, spurred by a large government capital expenditure push. Negative spillovers from financial sector distress, especially as forbearance measures expire, remain a risk to the growth outlook. Nonetheless, the Reserve Bank of India's liquidity stance is also expected to remain accommodative during the fiscal year ending in March 2022. As economic activity normalizes domestically and in key export markets, India's current account is expected to return to mild deficits around 1% in financial year 2022 and 2023, and capital inflows to be buoyed by continued accommodative monetary policy and abundant international liquidity conditions. Citing its own study, the World Bank said the share of employed men and women from non-agricultural households in rural India dropped by 56 and 36 percentage points respectively in the immediate aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis. Initial evidence suggests that men returned to work earlier, which could be linked to norms that prioritize men. Informal wage workers in India were significantly more vulnerable to the loss of employment than formal workers were during the early phase of COVID-19. That's it in this edition of KSG News. Stay tuned for more such short, concise, and informative videos.